let me just, again, make sure that I'm understanding the terminology. So what we wanna do is whenever we are, having conversation with anybody who wants to be elected in the state of Connecticut, we need to ask them if they believe that reproductive freedom should be in our Constitution.
Absolutely.
Because that's the only way that we can protect it without a constant ebb and flow because of the personality / party of the people in the legislature.
Yes.
So codified, when you hear someone say it is codified, that's not enough. It needs to be, we need to have a constitutional amendment if we want to enshrine this right for future generations.
Yeah, codified just means it's in statute. So there are basically 3 levels of law. There's constitutional law, there's statutory law, and then there's what's called common law, which is case law. That's all the cases. That pretty much is the order of power, quite frankly. Constitutional law is the big, broadest, and has the most binding authority on anything. Statutory law in most ways is secondary because that's legislative fiat, that's legislative stuff where they've said from the legislature this is what we want to have happen. Common law is all judicial law. It's judges interpreting cases and controversies that are before them and trying to make precedent to say this is what has happened before. We want to kind of let everybody know that this is what we're going to do going in the future. So the safest place for any law, the most protected place, is constitutional law because it's the hardest to change. So from a federal perspective, we have to have 2/3 of the sitting legislature to vote on a particular issue, and then we have to have 3/4 of the states to ratify that particular issue before it becomes constitutional. It's nearly impossible. It's been done, I think, 17, maybe 18 times since the founding of the country. It's extremely difficult, and in a partisan society that we have right now, I can't envision the Constitution federally being amended at all. So that's the safest level that we have. Right now in Connecticut, we have the second safest level for women's reproductive freedom because of the fact that we have it codified. That just basically means it's in our statutory code. It's in the Connecticut General Statutes as a law passed by the legislature. That requires a legislature in the future to come change it, but that's all it requires. If the legislature in the future decides to amend it, decides to tweak it, decides to play with it, or to abolish it altogether, they can do that at any point. They can repeal it, they can do whatever they want legislatively. Again, since we are somewhat removed from the legislature, we vote on our representatives, it's kind of incumbent upon us as citizens to make sure that the legislature is as reflective of us as it can possibly be within the context of these issues. That's the big thing here. We need to try to push it from codification up into the constitutionality in Connecticut because of the fact it protects it even greater.
So let's be very clear about this. Matt, do you support creating a constitutional amendment that gives women the right to choose what happens with their body and with their pregnancy?
Wholeheartedly.